kind of things was Ed doing when he wasn't silk screening or working so hard? I mean, I know he's always working and stuff, but what kind of things was he doing for leisure time, or were you even privy to what he was doing at the time, buddy?
Yeah, so we had a time where Ed wanted the community to get together, so we decided to hold a dance. So we rented out the armory, and we got
the whole armory.
The whole armory. We got a DJ to come in, and we went and bought 250 hot dogs.
Wow.
And
that'd be a big dance.
we advertised. He had a big pink sign out front advertising it. And we had 6 people show up.
Oh, wow.
But
what kind of music was it? You remember?
so 50s, 60s, and 70s.
Yeah.
Rock and roll.
So was he targeting like whoever or people his age or
Just anyone that wanted to come and dance.
to meet everybody and hang out?
Yeah.
So did that, when he got 6 people, he'd just say, oh, well, that's not going to work? Or
No, surprisingly enough, he's like, well, we're missing something. So 2 months later, we hold another one. And this time we did hot dogs and snow cones.
Oh, well, it's hot here.
It is. It was summertime.
Right.
We had over 100 people show up. We had a great time. And so we did a couple more after that. And then Ed had to go on the road for a bunch of shows. But it was a great time. And a lot of people had a good time dancing.
Well, right. So, I mean, did they do that after that? Was it some continuous deal or?
Unfortunately not. I mean, after that, Ed got pretty busy with some other projects he was doing, so we weren't able to hold him.
Right. So did he do any other things like that you remember?
No.
That's cool. I mean, that was he would try anything though, right? I mean, That was one thing about him. He was always trying something new, right?
Exactly.
So with technology stuff, I know Ed was always, way ahead of folks. So was he always looking at the new tech stuff and trying to figure out how to do stuff with it? And he was always successful with the things that I knew about that he was doing. Like when the new Corvette power plant came out, he was trying to get one, and that's what he ended up using in Beatnik Bandit 2, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so was you around when they did that car?
No, I wasn't. But he was big into Apple computers.
Oh, okay.
And he hired a programmer.
So that's crazy, because that had to have been like spaceship stuff for, Ed was born in 32, so, to get into computers, that was a big step. So he hired a programmer to help him out with the deal. And
Yep, so he had an Apple II computer.
Right.
And he hired a programmer local to do an ordering system for him to automate all of our ordering, because we were doing it by hand.
Oh, wow. And so is that how you got introduced to that stuff?
Yeah.
You learned it, and I guess that helped you?
It did.
Yeah.
Big time.
Big time. So, and it probably really sped things up for you guys and made it more, practical and all that, because he was probably doing it all manually but on paper, right?
Yeah, on average, we were doing about 75 orders per day.
Man, that's a lot of orders. And that was in what year, you figure?
So that would have been in 1988-ish.
88. And that was kind of about the time that Ed started kind of resurfacing, and really there was a big resurgence of Ed, because it kind of, no fault of Ed, is just the whole country had kind of went, where they didn't care about, hot rods or stuff like that, or in a different way. So there was a big resurgence of popularity of Ed. How did that affect Ed? How did he respond to that? Was he did he notice that, pretty much that people wanted him at the shows more or anything like that? Or
Yeah, he did, but he was trying to find something new that had never been done.
Right.
So he was always looking for something, because he didn't like to duplicate what other people did. He was an inventor.
Right.
He liked to be creative. And so he wanted to come up with something new that no one had ever done before.
Was that about now, at some point you went off to school and everything, I guess, huh?
Yep.
Yeah, so were you around when he started doing dealing with Japan and all that stuff, or?
I was a little bit.
Yeah, so that was that was a revolutionary deal, that Ed was one of the first guys that was going out to Japan and taking stuff out there because they really loved the American stuff. And Ed was one of the first guys that went out there and made a relationship with them that's still, to this day, I guess, going on in some way. So when Ed, when you was working for Ed at first, there was no car projects really going on or nothing, no trikes or anything for the first couple years, huh?
Yeah, he was busy trying to get some legal things done and trying to get his house organized and trying to create some new drawings.
Right.
Our first 2 years, he came up with 25 new drawings.
And that's pretty amazing because, at one point, I guess Ed had several guys working in his art department, so it went back to just Ed. So Ed went back to his roots pretty much, right? And it was just Ed's ideas. And the whole time, Ed was coming up with the ideas too and approving anything that came out of the studio. And no disrespect to Robert or Newt or anybody, but it was still Ed. I mean, that was Ed. So when we're talking about even as an artist for Ed, I always think, well, I'm working for Trixie, or we're doing things for Ed and Trixie, so it's still their stuff. It's anything you do Fink, no matter what twist you put on it, it's still Ed's stuff, right? So that's amazing that he was coming up with that many designs. So would he just still doodle on stuff when he's sitting around, and he come up with something? When he did, would he go like, man, look what I just made, and you added to it sometimes, or a lot of times on the idea or what it was going to be called, like you had touched on before? That's a really neat. So did you draw any of the stuff, or were you any good at the drawing and the art?
Unfortunately, that's not a talent that I possess or was able to master, but Ed was always asking for ideas. He'd say,
did he
throw
try
out some words.
Right, did he try to help, or did he try to get you to draw and help you at all with that? Or
he did. He even bought me my own pinstriping. Well, he gave me a pinstriping set.
Right.
And taught me how to pinstripe, but I'm too much of a perfectionist. So.
Well, yeah, I mean, you just get, it's one of those things. Pinstriping is really one of those. Airbrush the same way. So was Ed striping still and all that stuff?
He would do a few jobs.
Yeah. And did he do it just to keep his hand at it too around the shop, or he didn't even need to at that point?
I mean, he would go into Salt Lake and do it. He didn't like to do it local because he didn't really have a garage to work in.
Right. So did you get to go to the shows or get on the road?
It was probably about 5 years after he'd moved to Manti that I finally got to do my first show in Colorado.
Oh, wow. So I guess you was wanting to go to the shows, right?
Oh, I kept asking him to go, and finally he said, yes, quit asking.
Wow. And so you got to go. So was that, I guess that was the first time you got to see hot rod folks and how they reacted to Ed?
Yep, I didn't realize how big he was.
Yeah, it was amazing to you, right?
Larger than life.
All of a sudden you're a celebrity too because you're hanging with Ed.
Yep.
Yeah, so I mean, did he start kind of letting you go, or?
So I was able to go to 4 shows total.
Right.
So we did Colorado, Idaho, Hot August Nights in Reno, and then he let me go to Texas one time.
Oh, really? What city, you remember?
Dallas.
Okay. Well, I probably was there and didn't even know that you were there. So that's cool. So at what? Let's see. You went on about 10 years, so you must have been in your 20s when you quit working with Ed.
Yeah, we still stayed in touch.
Right.
But he was really a motivator, and he wanted to make sure that I wasn't trying to do something that wasn't in my best interest.
Right, because he always was about that. Find your niche, and that's what you do.
Exactly.
And pursue it. With me, he always told me that, because I said I wanted to be a car builder, and he said, man, learn your skill and your craft first before you ever try to charge anybody, and you would know when it was right to charge because you'd know it. So if you did it before that time, you were shortchanging somebody. He was, big on that kind of stuff. He was really ethical. So did he try to teach you guys all that stuff too, the life lessons and being ethical, and you don't have to be a bad guy, you can be the good guy and still succeed and all that?
He really did. So, I mean, it was quite eye-opening at the shows. He would just have people put their money on the table while he was airbrushing or whatnot. I mean, he wouldn't actually collect it. And the second show I did, I'm like, all this money's on the table. And he goes, well, it's important to interact with the people.
Right.
He goes, money, you need it to do things, but it's not the most important thing.
It comes and goes. It's
right.
And I think that's why his legacy lasts to this day. Because I hear stories from people all over on the road, and they're pretty much all have the same spin, where it's like Ed was, he was nice to me, and he told me these things that nobody else would tell me, or he did this, stopped what he was doing and went and looked at my car or something, and that was legit, that was genuine Ed. And you don't get that much, especially with people at that level. A lot of times they won't, and Ed always did. So that's what you saw on a daily basis, right?
Yeah, I mean, he would take the time to make sure you understood, or that at least he got you started.
Right.
To where
right.
you could practice, and then if you needed more help, he was always there, open to questions.
Right, so I've got to ask, how was Ed, to work for on a daily basis? I guess there was days where he wasn't having a good day, or that was some bosses you're just like, man, this guy. But how was Ed to work for? I mean, 10 years of it, man.
I mean, he was great. I would go ask him what needs to be done. I loved spending time with him, but sometimes he's like, I just need to think. Mm-hmm. Can you give me some time, or can you go do this?
Right.
So I would go do that and come back, and then,
right.
bounce ideas off of him, or ask him questions about life. I mean, he had such an interesting life.
Oh, man.
And he was always open to share wisdom with me.
Right.
Which really has made me the person I am today.
Right. So, we all miss him, I guess, in our own way, how we knew him and stuff, but you were like with him so much, and we're good friends. So, can you think of, I know food and lunch and all that was big with Ed, so I guess you guys went and ate out at hamburgers and stuff a lot, or you order in and they bring it, or can you remember all that kind of stuff? Like, what was like a day of like, let's go get lunch, or did you have to go get it and bring it back to the shop, or Ed went and got it, or how did that work out?
Most of the time we didn't order anything. He loved cantaloupe and cantaloupe and honeydews.
Oh, yeah, so y'all would cool.
So I would always take a knife and cut mine, but he loved to chop his with his hand.
Yeah.
Break it in half, and then he would eat it rind and all.
Oh, really? Rind and all? Wow.
He said that was the most healthy part.
Oh, yeah. Well, it probably is. I'm going to have to try that. Yeah, that's cool. Y'all's work day, did you start early in the morning and work late hours, or y'all had a set time, or how did that work?
So I always just come after school, and then on Saturdays.
Right, okay. And so Ed, did he get up early in the morning and work long hours, or just whatever he needed to do?
Yeah, he was always up at 5 a.m. or so, and then he'd work till 6.
Wow.
And then we'd go in and watch wrestling and
wrestling, okay.
Eat saltwater taffy, that was his favorite. Right.
So did he just enjoy the wrestling deal, or he'd get into, like, that's real? Because like my granddad, we would argue with him, Granddad, they're just wrestling. And he'd say, oh no, they're wrestling, they're real. So it was Ed like that, or he got it? I mean, he was the ultimate showman, so I mean.
He got it, and he didn't like the volume on.
Oh, really?
He just liked to watch the picture. Jerry the King Lawler was one of his favorite ones.
Oh, cool. Okay, Jerry Lawler.
He actually come out a couple times to visit.
Yeah. Oh, really?
Yeah.
So that's interesting that you said that. So he would watch lots of programs like that. Did he used to, like, say stuff instead of the people talking on shows?
Yep.
He would narrate it instead of the shows? That had to have been hilarious.
Oh,
right?
It was funny.
So that's another thing nobody ever tipped. Everybody's always about the cars or the art. So Ed was a funny guy, right? He was a really jokester and funny. So was he a practical joker somewhat too, or?
Sometimes.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of times though he was serious. I mean, he wanted to make sure that the work got done that needed to be done, but he knew how to have fun.
Right. Yeah. He was a funny guy.